This is, as I'm sure you can tell, a very long video. Hi, I'm Kiwi Kana, a freelance illustrator, and today I'm going to be talking about everything that I drew in 2024. But for the sake of time, only finished paintings because otherwise we would be here all day, and I'm sure you have better things to do. So grab some snacks, maybe something to drink. We're gonna cut this intro short and just jump right into it. So the very first thing that I drew in 2024 was this drawing I did of Luffy. I think I drew him in January, and I still honestly like this piece. You may have heard me talking about it in my last video. This is the piece that everybody loves so much at cons, at my gallery exhibition. This is the one that's sold. I don't know what it is about it. I think it's the lighting. People really like that sort of almost, Rembrandt-y style lighting. And so I do really like this piece. It's funny, after I finished it, I really, really hated it. Absolutely thought it was terrible, but then it sort of grew on me once I gave it some time and space, and then obviously after everybody seemed to really enjoy it, it's become more of I look at it more fondly, let's say. There are some things that I do think are not great. The first thing I'd like to point out is this ear. What's going on with that? It's not terrible, but I feel like I could have spent more time really rendering it and also making it look a bit more like an ear. Like that should really connect out here and then down there like that. So I feel like it's not totally off, but I could have done a better job there. The only other thing that's really bothering me about this is that there's some muddiness in these shadows, like here and here. It's all really desaturated. Now, what I do like about the red section is that instead of just going from this red color to, let's say, a just darker red color, instead I do have this purple in here, which is interesting. I wish I would have made it a little more saturated though. Yeah, so you can see all of these colors from here to here. It actually gets less saturated as you go into the shadows, and I definitely don't recommend doing that. I wish I would have cranked that saturation up and done that in the shadows. See how that just pops a little more? I feel like that would have just looked a little nicer. And then I do like what I'm doing here. I'm bringing some of that reflected light of the blue from the background, but again, it's just looking a little too desaturated. It's pretty much gray. So I would go in and take this color now, maybe let's use a soft brush for demonstration, and pop up that saturation just a little bit. I feel like that's nicer, right? The same thing in the skin here is happening with that desaturated color. So I would just do more saturation to add that sort of transparency. I don't know. And then in here, I'm doing a lot of good things where I've got that sort of more saturated color, because let's see. Yeah, so it definitely does get more saturated as you get further in. I would have pumped it up even more. Again, just more saturation all the time for these shadow shapes. But all in all, I don't think it's that bad in the skin. I like that I'm adding in these greens and blues. I actually really like that reflected light here. That shape is really nice with that green color. I'm a big fan of that, and I love how saturated and warm it gets in the nose. Again, showing that sort of skin transparency because you're having a really, really bright light being shined in from above. So you get this shape here, that lighting over here. Yeah, that's all really nice. I also like the lighting on the hat. You get this really blue sort of color here. I like all of that. I like the hair. I think it works. There are obviously those things that I wish I could tweak, but otherwise, I am pretty happy with this one still. I will give this one an 8 out of 10. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, next up is this night drawing that I did for a mutual on my TikTok. This is fun. It was for an art swap. I really enjoyed working on this one because I feel like I had really solid line art going into it, which isn't normal for me. Usually my line art is just so bad. So I kind of felt a little more confident with it. I think I probably could have rendered out this metal a little better. I don't think it's terrible. I think it's just under-rendered, but you get the impression. There's those shiny shapes here that they work. I like them. So I'm not totally mad about this, actually. And this was actually the first time that I started experimenting with hair like this, where everything got a lot more shapy, I guess, and I felt more confident rather than trying to draw out individual strands, just focusing in on layering in these shapes with this really dark, saturated color in the shadows and then pushing really light in the highlights which I think I learned a lot during it. So I honestly really like this one still. I obviously didn't render the hands like even at all. I'm not sure why I did that. And I also was pretty excited because I was playing around with a lot of different elements like this helmet that I didn't necessarily have a lot of practice with. Yeah, I still like the face. I think it holds up. I like this kind of expression. Sometimes I feel like my faces look a little bit flat, like they're not super expressive, kind of dead in the eyes. I don't think that's the case here. This nose is maybe a little odd. Like, I think you're maybe seeing too much of this nostril over here, but not really in a way that's super upsetting. I still think it reads pretty well. Yeah, I'm happy with this one still. Again, it was more of a concept sketch, so not fully rendered. Also, I hate to say it, but I left this one line in here, and I only realized after I posted it, so that has haunted me to this day. But you know what, I'll give this one another 8 out of 10. Maybe an 8.5 out of 10. Just because there's like less to critique since it was looser, but I like it. All right, next one. Okay, if you've seen any of my shorts, you may have actually seen this drawing before, which was a master study of Girl with a Pearl Earring. I like this one. I don't know, I have mixed feelings about it. I was trying to work on speed, and I think at this point I was feeling maybe a little insecure in my artwork, so it was kind of an off day for me. There's a lot I do like. Like, I like this sort of demarcation and these really strong highlights. I mean, I'm drawing what I see in the reference, so it's not like I'm inventing this, but I think I did a good job capturing that. I do think some of these colors, again, I struggle with saturation. Yeah, I'm like, why didn't I'm not sure. I feel like I should pull up the reference and compare. Let me go do that real quick. Okay, I'm back. I have the reference, so let's really dig into this. I want to know, I feel like there's more saturation. Let's see here. Yeah, so we're sitting over here. Let's put that color down. So we've got that compared to this. So you can see it's not so different, but there is that added warmth and saturation. I didn't do any color picking for this when I was referencing because I wanted to try to get the colors myself, because that's one thing that I was really working on. Yeah, again, we got this color compared to this color. They're really close, but I do think that little added bit of saturation genuinely makes all the difference. I didn't commit to this shape right here in the cheek. You've got that really hard edge there that's indicating that cheekbone. And I tried to do it over here, you can see, but I just didn't commit to it. I feel like I could have gotten a lot stronger in these shadows and really committed to it. And then pull some of that darkness down here. I would obviously have to blend that together a little bit. Yeah, see, that's a lot better. That makes such a big difference. And then again, pulling that shadow up. I think I probably could have gotten closer if I was color picking. And I don't regret not color picking because I think it was wise to try to match it myself. But I am seeing now, looking back, a lot of the places where I didn't really commit to the original drawing. I also added a lot more warmth here, weirdly. I guess, taking some creative liberties. But Vermeer actually puts this sort of green color, which is really interesting. There. And that just works better. It really does. Wow. I'm learning a lot. So yeah, there were a lot of things I think I could do better about this, and I think if I had been color picking, I would have gotten closer, but I think it's good practice to try to color pick yourself and get as close as possible. Now, the one thing that I would have recommended myself to do at this point after I was finished with this drawing is to actually do what I'm doing now, to have gone back in and see how close or not close I actually got, and then make those adjustments later on, trying to, without color picking, go back in and make those tweaks based on, seeing here, okay, this is a lot more saturated than this. Let me see if I can get to this color without color picking. That's what I would have recommended I do. This one's okay. I think it's not anything super exciting. Not anything that I obviously wouldn't put it in my portfolio. It's a study. I don't think it's that bad. I think there are definitely things that I could fix, and I actually might go in and try to repaint some of this now just to see how much closer I could get. So I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. Yeah, I think that's right. You can definitely see the improvements that I could have made had I been paying closer attention. But, that's what studies are for, so I'm glad I actually went back in and reviewed this. Okay, next one! Okay, next I have one that's honestly still very dear to me, and that's this drawing of Mitsuri I did per a follower's request over on my TikTok, and it was actually one of the first drawings that got me a lot of attention over there. I had never gotten such a large response for a piece of work before, so it still has a place in my heart because of that, and also because it was one of the first times I really felt like I had tapped into a style that I might want to continue working in. I was still feeling like really insecure about my style and didn't really know what it looked like, and this felt like a glimpse into what I could be doing. So there are a lot of things I still really like about it. I think that this pose works really well, and I really, really like these clothing fold shapes. I think I did a really good job with those. I might add some more color. I kind of struggle with white. It's looking a little dull because I've just got gray. I don't have a lot of, maybe if I had brought some of that blue into the shadows to kind of brighten it up a little bit, give it a little more color. The only other big issue here is really in the face. The proportions are just a little wrong. I hate to say it to myself, but they're a little wrong. I've got a third, and just a little more than a third. That chin is just a little too long, too big. Now, I don't know, let's see, if I were to bring that down a little, maybe to shrink the chin, like, is that better? I feel like that would have been better. I could have even maybe gotten away with leaving the eyes where they are and just bringing up that jawline, because the chin is it's just a little too big. Yeah, you see, it's just too long. It's too long. There's no way about it to get around it here. It's just too long. So I would have definitely fixed that. I also have the same ear problem. At this point in my artistic career, I really wasn't paying much attention to my ears, which is funny because a lot of professors in college will say you can tell a good artist from a mediocre artist based on how much attention they give to the ears. I was clearly falling into that mediocre category here. I've hopefully improved a little bit. Sometimes I'm still lazy with my ears. I definitely need to improve on that. Oh, one more thing. I really just totally forgot to draw in the indication of that nostril line. That's totally missing. I should have gone in and defined that a little more. Yeah, that's a little better. Anyway, so there are definitely things that I would fix that are not amazing, but overall, again, I still really like this one. I'm gonna give this one a 7.5 out of 10, and most of that is based on just nostalgia, because there are definitely some big glaring issues. But you know what? I'm gonna give it to myself, 7.5 out of 10. I'm sticking with it. Okay, let's look at the next one, which, I don't like as much. Okay, we're on to this one, which makes me so embarrassed to look at. Oh my god. Okay, we're not gonna think about it too much, but I wanted to draw Hiei from Yu Yu Hakusho. I had done one of Kurama a while ago, which I kind of want to draw another Kurama piece because it was not my best work, and I really, really like Yu Yu. Anyway, this one is really embarrassing for me to look at because, one, I wasn't flipping the canvas while I was working on this, and I only did it at the very end, realized how weird everything looked, and then did not have the energy to fix it, because you can see, why is his head tilted that much? It's just so weird. If I were to do it now, I would probably rotate it a little bit, so it maybe looked more natural. That's maybe a little better. I also think that the neck and shoulders are just kind of weird here. So if the neck is going down like this, let's make this a little bigger so you can see. And then we'd have the shoulders coming out here. Yeah, it's just a little odd with how this overshirt is. I think his shoulders are just a little too small, so there are definitely some anatomy problems. I'm not going to dwell too much on it because it's kind of a lost cause. The other really massive issue is, again, this desaturated shadow color, and you can see it in the skin, you can see it in the clothes. Let's put it on top of the purple. It's just so desaturated. I really don't know why it's such a problem for me with these desaturated colors. I need to get better at just that little added bit of saturation makes a world of difference. I think up here there's also just some weird painting in the face. I would have just sort of gotten rid of that weird line. You can see how there's this line there that's sort of breaking up the nose. That's a little odd. I would just paint over that now. Maybe add some more shadow into these eye sockets. I don't think I was really focused on the planes of the face either. I'm trying to get there. But why is there purple lighting here, but not on the rest of the face? I don't know. It's a little weird. I give myself an A for effort and a D for everything else. Well, Overall, I think I would give this one a 4.5 out of 10. There are some things I still like about it. There are a lot of things that I don't. Let's not dwell on it for too long. All right, moving on. All right, next one is this piece I did for Valentine's Day. It's a little embarrassing, but it's fine. There's a lot I still think works about this one. Like, the anatomy isn't terrible, although there is some weird stuff going on with the abs. I'm not even gonna worry about that right now. And also his nose, it's like I forgot that the nostril would be over here, so that's a little weird, but not so weird that it's distracting. Yeah, I like how the pants came out, like all of these shading shapes. Again, the only big issue I have, and I bet you'll know what I'm going to say, is once again the saturation. I just have such a problem with saturation in shadows, and I think I've gotten better about it now, but again, you can see I'm just not saturated enough. It was definitely my Achilles heel for a while. I don't know why I struggled with it so much. So I think when it comes to a rating, I don't really hate the composition. I don't hate a lot about this one, but again, there is that glaring issue of the saturation. It's pretty rough. So I think I'm gonna go for, I'll be generous, and I'll say a 6 out of 10. Okay, this is Nessa from Pokemon. I had a lot of fun working on this one. I'd say that there's a lot that I'm doing better that I'm starting to learn around this point, but there are still some things that aren't really working. One thing that I do really like is this shirt. I love this really strong light shape that I've put in here. I think it really functions quite well. And then I also love that I'm getting this reflected light in the shadows that would be bouncing off of her skin tone. Now again, there's a lot of muddiness in the shorts. We're getting some interesting pops of color with the purple, which I don't hate. Again, there's just a lot of muddiness, but all in all, it's cute, it functions. The face is maybe a little under-rendered for the rest of the piece, but you know, I like it. I'm gonna also give this one a 6 out of 10. All right, next one. Okay, this one kind of stresses me out to look at because I really do not like her face. There's just something about it that doesn't work for me. It's not horrible. The composition is okay. I did this as obviously fan art for Allie Hazelwood's Bride, and it really blew up on my TikTok. I got like 50,000 views, which I almost never get. I was really excited about that. I mean, blew up relatively speaking to the rest of my videos. But I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. One thing I do really like are the clothes. Again, I was sort of learning how to actually draw clothes here with these triangular shapes and having the light hit there. I think that still works. I'm still happy with that. Again, I wish that these shadows weren't so muddy. What am I doing? Why can't I add just a little bit more color into them? I don't know. It's devastating. What was I thinking? It makes everything look so muted and bad. I also remember around this time, I would see that things were looking muted, and I would be frustrated that everything was looking muddy, and so I'd go in after the fact and bump up all of the saturation, and it would still look muddy, and I'm like, it's so saturated, why is it looking muddy? And again, it's because I need more saturation in the shadows, not necessarily in the highlights, and that is going to really save it from looking super muddy. So if you're struggling with muddy colors and you don't know what's going on, look at your shadows and see if they're desaturated, because it might just be that you have to tweak those colors a little bit and the rest of the painting is actually okay. Anyway, this one is all right. It's not one of my favorites, but I appreciate what it did for my TikTok. So I'm gonna give this, do I give it another 6 out of 10? Like, I don't like it as much as the last one, so I think I'm gonna give it a 5.5. Okay, next one. Up next is My Hero fan art, which is also a popular seller at cons when I table, so that's kind of fun. This was a really ambitious piece, I think, for me at the time, because I wasn't used to drawing multiple characters together like this in my more painterly style. I had done it when working on comics, but not so much with all of this painting, and I was also kind of winging the poses a little bit, so I am proud of how this one turned out, but I also think that there's a lot that I could improve on. Again, you'll hear me say it a million times, these desaturated shadows, it's a pain. I find it really embarrassing to look back on, but you know, we live and we learn. I also think I could have done more with this blue lighting. I think that it's nice to have this blue lighting, you know, that lighting from the lightning, I think that's important, but it's a little weird that it's, you know, not hitting this whole side of his face. I think I could have done more with that, and then again, you would get some light on like both sides. It would be a little stronger, I think. So I wish I had done more there. I do like that I added a little bit of blue into the highlight over on that side, and this side is yellow. Again, this yellow light from the explosion, I think I could have just done more with all of this. and I wish that I would have defined this shape a little more to sort of really portray the planes of their face. It is what it is. I'm not too unhappy. I think the poses worked really well. I'm happy with the anatomy, and I'm happy with the clothing shapes. I just wish, again, there had been more saturation there. This one I'll give a 7.5 out of 10. That feels fair. All right, next one. Okay, next up is this little comic I did when I was playing a lot of Breath of the Wild. I made this little comic just for fun because I thought that Link's reaction to seeing the Koroks was just like really funny. He just looks so unamused, so I had to paint this. I think it was really cute. It didn't take me too long. It wasn't super rendered, but I still really like it. I think I'm gonna give this one an 8 out of 10 purely for nostalgia, I guess. It probably shouldn't be ranked that high, but you know what? Give it to me, it's fine. Okay, and now we're on this one. This is probably one of my least favorite things that I have drawn this year. I think it's really weak compared to some of my other work, and I don't love looking at it. The only thing that I really like are these bubbles. I think they turned out well, and I also kind of like the fish and the water lighting on top of the fish. I think that turned out okay. This fish, honestly, is terrible. I don't like him at all. I don't know. I think the colors just look really muddy and bad. Again, I'm running into this muddiness in the sweatshirt. I have just too much going on. It feels really busy here. There's no definition on this hand at all, so that makes it look really weird and unfinished. I'm trying to get some of this blue reflected light here, but I don't feel like I really committed to it. Like, why is there blue right here but not right here, right? I would have honestly just committed to the blue a little bit more and have it be the sort of primary color in these shadows. Something like that. I also just don't like the colors. I think the orange is way too orange to be underwater. Nothing really looks like it's actually in the water. It just looks like I've totally ignored that things should be looking a lot more blue. I want to see what would happen if I just filled the whole thing with like a blue overlay. Like, I really do think something more interesting could have happened if I had sort of committed to the blue. This was to draw this in your style, and I actually really like the original artist's work. I can pop it in here. I don't know, I don't I don't mind the colors themselves because I pulled them from the artist's work. I just think I needed to do more with it, and I just didn't. I don't know. It's not my favorite. I'm gonna give this one a 4 out of 10. Definitely not my best work. Okay, I'm going to do these next two together since they're part of the same series, Lute and Alistair from Hazbin Hotel. I was also getting a little less painterly, like you can tell I was doing a lot more sort of, it's not quite cel-shaded, but I was sort of getting there with these really defined planes. I don't hate that though. I go back and forth on it. You'll see that I do more of it in some of my future drawings, and I'm kind of trying to get away from that now, these really big flatted in areas of color. I don't mind it. Like, I think it works. Like, the hair I think is actually really nice on this one. I think it looks good. But again, there are these really flat sections of color, and I don't think that resonates with my audience as much. People, as I talked about before, really liked the Luffy. They like that sort of painterly style, so I'm trying to get back to that now. The one thing I'll say about Lute, I like a lot of her. I do wish I had spent a little more time rendering out these wings. You know, it's funny, I remember when I finished this one feeling really, really bad about the wings, thinking that they looked really unfinished and messy, but looking back on them now, they're not as bad as I remember them being. I think maybe I was just being hypercritical of myself. That just goes to show you that sometimes it just takes taking a step away from your work, and maybe you'll like it more when you come back to it. I think that's the case here. Yeah, these are okay. They're certainly not my worst work. I think I'll give them both a 7 out of 10. All right, next one. Okay, next I did this Starfire Nightwing painting. This one is also really embarrassing to look back on. I really don't like how his face turned out. I think it looks a little unappealing. I don't know. I like the hair here. I think that looks really nice. I'm happy with all of those shapes, and I like this kind of pastel color. I like the hair. I like the hair. You'll see I'm getting closer to this really flatly rendered style, which isn't terrible. Again, I don't hate it. It's just not necessarily what people want to see. I'm still getting some of that reflected light in these shadows, which I'm happy about. Yeah, it's just this face. This face, it pains me to look at, so I don't want to look at it any longer, and I'm gonna give this one 5, maybe? A 5 out of 10. maybe less. We'll go with 5 so I can move on. Okay, we're moving on. Okay, this one is also kind of embarrassing to look at. I guess I was just going through an embarrassing drawing phase. Again, I'm doing these really sort of graphic shadow shapes and lighting shapes, which they're not bad. I kind of lost the thread a little bit on this arm. I don't know what's really going on there. And the background isn't terrible. I really like just kind of this curtain section and this table. That little table leg with that pop of light is nice. I think the background does get a little boring over here. There are a lot of just really basically blocked in books, which I think I could have added more to. Either some detailing on the books or just some sort of variation. They're also all just sitting super straight. Like these two, I feel like I could have angled them a little to show that they've been sort of moved around and messed with. I think that could have created some more visual interest. Another thing, I just wasn't flipping my canvas with this one. It was actually for RisuCon, a con that I tabled at a little while ago, which I had so much fun tabling at, but I was trying to rush out this drawing because their logo is the squirrel logo. I wanted to have something squirrel themed, but I just didn't spend enough time. I wasn't flipping my canvas, and when I flip it, it's just, she's leaning so much. There's just this really weird lean pose that she's doing in here that I really don't like, so this one is also not really my best work. This one's gonna get a 4 out of 10, I think. I apologize to myself for rating this so lowly, but I can't do anything about it. Next up is this elf drawing. There's a lot that I like about this. You can see once again that I'm still doing these really graphic shadow and light shapes. I like some of the background. I think it's simple, but it functions. The one thing that I really don't like about this is really the shading on the face. I think this side of the face works, and I like how I'm pulling more yellow up into the forehead, that I'm getting, again, some of this kind of reflected light over here. I don't necessarily know what's going on with this side of his face. I feel like I could have just, let's see if this works. I could have just taken this whole thing and made it light. Yeah, see, why didn't I do that? I don't know. And then you would still have some lightness coming into this forehead, even though his hair is kind of blocking things a little bit. Yeah, like that. And then some more light here. The light on the nose could just split in the middle. And then you might get some lightness over here, maybe. Kind of like that. Yeah, I just think that that's a little nicer. I mean, the lighting doesn't necessarily have to be as strong, but I think that makes more sense than having this sort of confusing darker shade right up here, because this plane of his face would actually be closer to the sunlight if it's streaming down like this. So for this part of his face to be brighter, the light would have to be coming kind of up like this, which doesn't match the rest of the drawing. You know, all of this lighting is coming down from the sun. So I think if I had just stuck to adding this in, simplifying that lighting, it would have been a better, more functional piece. Yeah, I like that a lot better. I also wish I would have been a little more bold with my lighting. Like, I feel like I could have gotten some of that dappled light from the trees and put that in here. I'm not entirely sure what that would have looked like, but I think that would have been more interesting than just having the sort of straight on light. But all in all, it's not terrible. I don't really hate it too much. I think I will give this one a 7.5 out of 10. That feels right. Okay, now we have this drawing of Cardan from the Cruel Prince series. I did have a lot of fun drawing this, so I will give myself that. And I think that his face turned out okay, and I'm also a big fan of this really pink lighting on his hair. I kind of like the colors as a whole in this. I feel like I was finally starting to feel a little more confident with my colors and pushing them to be a little more unified rather than focusing so much on what every color would actually be. So instead of, having a lot of different colors and not a unified color scheme here, I'm sticking really to purple and blue. And I guess a little bit of pink. I'm not really deviating from that, which I think looks good. In the past, I probably would have seen these trees and thought, okay, they need to be brown, but really in this case, they're purple, and that kind of works for this lighting scenario and looks a bit more natural. I might have thought that these plants should be green, but here they're actually blue because it's all super relative, right? So I like a lot about it. I think one glaring thing is this hand is just too big. He's got yaoi hands. He really does. It's not a deal breaker, but they are huge. I would definitely have shrunk that hand down a little bit now. There's also a little bit of stiffness in this pose just because he's standing very straight upright. There isn't much of a curve here, but that's not, it's not too bad. I do like the composition. I like him standing in front of all of these elements in the foreground, and then he's taking up this like sort of part of the foreground and also the midground, but then you also have these trees in the midground and then all of these party goers in the background. I think one thing I really struggled early on was having all of these different compositional elements, which made my piece lack a little bit of depth. I know I've talked about that on my channel before in some of my redrawing videos, was lacking that depth. So I think I'm finally starting to pick that up here, which I quite like. Yeah, all in all, it's not the worst. I think it's still pretty good. Again, I have all that flat shading, which I'm trying to do less of now, but I think overall, I'll give this one an 8 out of 10. Okay, so this is a sort of dog ghosty situation that I did as a commission. I still think this one is really cute. It's a little bit of a bizarre prompt, but it was based off of a book, and I think it turned out pretty well. I really like the lighting, the sort of like dappled lighting on the trees here, and I like how I really break up the light and dark in the background with this bright light shining here. I'm still sort of in that flat shading era because you can see like I don't do any shading on the trees here, but I'm starting to bring in some more of those colors back here. It's all still very flat, unblended, but I think it kind of works for this piece to be a little more graphic. This one was really cute. I also really like this little chicken. I think that turned out really cute. I really struggled with this one though. I don't do a lot of dogs, and so fur painting isn't really my strong suit, and I obviously don't draw a lot of dog skeletons, so that was a little difficult. But all in all, I think it's an interesting one. I think it turned out okay. I'm gonna give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Okay, up next is this portrait. I think this one, if I remember correctly, was prompted because of how unhappy I was with Nightwing's face in the last drawing you saw of him. I felt like I just couldn't draw men. I was really, really down on myself. I felt super disappointed. So I was like, I have to redeem myself. I'm gonna draw Nightwing again, and this time I will draw him better. So that's what I set out to do. He's not like super Nightwing, but I think it gets the point across. I think that this face works a lot better and is a lot more appealing than the last one. I also really like these lighting shapes on the hair, I think work really well. Yeah, I was really, really pleased with how this one turned out. I've got that reflected purple light from the background in these shadows, which I think works. It's not perfect. It's still looking a little desaturated and maybe a tiny bit muddy, which I still need to work on, but overall I felt like I had really redeemed myself from the last attempt, which made me, look past some of these things that weren't so perfect. So, this one was a quick one, but it was really the confidence boost I needed at the time. So if you're ever in a space where you feel really disappointed about something you've drawn, I do recommend going back and trying again, because you'll probably have improved since your last attempt, and it never hurts to see how much you've progressed. That always helps me feel a lot better about myself and my work. So because of all of those things, even though it's simple, I'll give this one an 8 out of 10. Okay, finally we're back to one that you've seen on my channel. This one was based off of an OC prompt for a Halloween OC. This is actually the first one I did post my art gallery, and so I was really, really trying to bring back some of that painterly style, adding in those greens and blues, and I really do feel like this was a turning point for me. I was obviously starting my YouTube channel, which I'm really excited to have been able to continue, but I felt like I needed to push myself out of my comfort zone to try to get back to that painterly style that people really enjoyed. This one's going to be harder to critique because it's more recent, so it's kind of hard to see the errors yet because I just haven't improved as much. I definitely think there's still a little bit of muddiness, which is my Achilles heel, apparently. I really struggle with it. But overall, I was really pleased with this one. I think it turned out okay. I'm gonna give this one, I don't know if it gets an 8 out of 10. It might, it's a little too basic maybe. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. You know what? What's stopping me? Okay, up next is another one you've seen on my channel. This was a redraw of this piece, which I'll put up on screen right now. I definitely think I improved a lot on this one when it compares to the old piece, and I also like how I'm sort of combining this painterly style with some of these larger shapes that I was using earlier. in some of my previous work. I think that that's cool and is sort of something that I'm interested in continuing. I don't know how successful I am with it, but it definitely made this drawing a fun experience. And I'm also really pleased with the background. I don't do a ton of detailed backgrounds. It's not that I don't enjoy doing them, but sometimes I just don't leave myself enough time to get them done. And this one isn't super detailed. It's pretty much just like squiggles and blobs of color. But that said, I think it really functions. I think it works. I think it frames the character really well. I like the composition. So I'm still proud of this one. I think the face is maybe a little under-rendered, and I kind of would fix some of that if I were to work on it some more. Yeah, like the anatomy might be a little weird, but I'm still happy with it. I think it's definitely an improvement on the old one, which is what I set out to do. So this one gets a 7 out of 10 for me. Next up is this drawing I did for Sam Does Art's Pause Challenge, which was super fun. I was looking at a lot of splash art references for the kind of painting the skin, which I think worked really well. I won't spend too much time on the rest of these because you've seen them all before and we've already been here long enough. But I like how this one turned out. It's really rough. I mean, a lot of things are super unrendered, unfinished, but that's kind of what I was going for. So yeah, I think this one's good. I'm going to give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Next up is this fan art of Kurapika from Hunter x Hunter. I really like how this one turned out. I like the colors, I like the lighting, it feels really sort of edgy and gritty. There is a little bit of muddiness in here in kind of the sleeve. I really struggled with the sleeve. I think the perspective was a little hard for me, but not so much that I think it's too distracting. I think it turned out pretty well. I'm pretty proud of this one still. I think this one, just because there's that little bit of muddiness, I'm gonna go for another 7.5 out of 10. But personally speaking, I would give it like a 9 out of 10 just for vibe, but skill-wise, 7 out of 10. All right, we're almost done, I promise. Next up is Elphaba from Wicked. I really like this one. I think I put a lot of time and care into it, and I think it really shows. I love the little floral details, even though they're a little rough. I think it creates this sort of cool, painted sort of situation. I really like all of the different color I put in this dress. I wish I had given her long nails. I'm not sure. And I also forgot the freckles, which is a shame. Maybe I'll go back in and add those later. But all in all, I really like this one. The only really big issue, and it's not even a big issue I have with it, is that there's a little bit of a weird value situation happening on her broom. I couldn't get it to look quite right, so I think the values are just a little off over there. But otherwise, I still really like it. I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Maybe I shouldn't, but I like it. So 9 out of 10. Okay, now we've got this painting of my OCs, Angora and Valen. I struggled with this one. If you watched my last video last week, you'll know how much I struggled. So it kind of makes this one a little bit rough to look at. I don't know if I can look at it really objectively because I know how much I struggled doing it. I don't think it's bad. I think that Angora's face is a lot more detailed and rendered than Valen's, so that's a little weird. I was just feeling kind of burnt out towards the end here. I like some of the colors. I don't hate it. I think there are some issues. The pose is maybe a little stiff and awkward because, like I said in my last video, I wasn't really using a lot of reference, which definitely made this a challenge, and it's something I do not recommend. So I think for those reasons, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I think it's good, but not great. Last but certainly not least, I have these 2 drawings that I did as Christmas presents. I still really love these. Obviously, I did them just last week, so it's kind of hard to judge them fairly. So instead, I'll just say thank you so much for watching this video. If you've made it to the end, leave a comment down below. I don't know how you made it this far. This one is really long, and it's mostly just me rambling. But I hope it did give you some ideas on maybe how to break down your old work. I think it's really important as artists to look back on our art from the year and see how we improved, and also start to notice trends of things that maybe we struggled with. Like for me, I really need to work on saturation in my shadows. And for these, I think they're going to get a 9 out of 10, just because they're fun, so why not? I feel so grateful for how much I've been able to accomplish in just a few months on YouTube, and that's all thanks to you. So maybe by next year we'll be able to hit, 2,000 subscribers? Is that too ambitious? Anyway, I'll have a new video next week about drawing resolutions for the start of the new year, so make sure to stay tuned for that. If you like my videos, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and maybe go follow me on Instagram or TikTok. Thank you so much again, and Happy New Year!